I just turned 65, May 13th. I was born in 1953. I was born in a trap line 65 years ago, and my first language, of course, is Soto, and technically that's what we call it, Soto. It's between Cree and Ojibwe, and I've learned my language when I was just a small boy, learning from my mom and my dad, my grandparents. And I come from Deer Lake, Ontario. Deer Lake's number is 237, and my band number is 144. When I was a young man, I went to school. I learned to be a guide for fishing, hunting, and I learned that from my father. My father's name was Elias Ray. My grandfather's name is Edward Ray. And my grandfather told stories and legends. And he told some of his legends to Stevenson. I think it's Stevenson. James, I think his name is James Stevenson. He wrote a book on he called it Shaman. And that's where my grandfather told his stories and legends. But as for me, when I was a young man, I went to missionaries, and I learned to supposedly civilized, of which I did not really understand. But today, I understand what that means. But I think Native people were more civilized than the people that were trying to make them civilized. I really appreciate and I'm proud of who I am. I'm a Native man growing up in Deer Lake, Ontario. My father told me to get an education, so I did. I went to Bible school, went to Confederation colleges, got my carpentry papers, and I worked as a carpenter in Winnipeg, All Fab Building Components Limited, for quite a few years. And then after that I went back to Deer Lake as a young man with my family of 2 children. I had a son and a daughter, and I went back there, and I have 3 children altogether, and I'm so proud of them. They went to high school, college, university, and I'm really proud of my children, what they have accomplished going to school. And today my dream and my prayer for my young people is that they go to school and get an education. My education was learning from my father and my grandfather to live off the land. I became a trapper as a very young man, and now today I have learned so much from going to school, from my elders, and from the people I worked with. I did many things. Today I'd like to talk to you about what I learned from my grandparents, the people that I worked with as elders, about treaties. Treaties that my elders signed. In 1910, Treaty 5 was signed at Deer Lake First Nation. It was signed by a fiddler, Thomas Fiddler, and there was other signatories at that time, my ancestors. And I'm so proud to be part of that group today. Deer Lake is a great First Nation. It is on top of Fort Severn. Fort Severn starts at Deer Lake, Ontario. And I'm sitting here today at the bottom of that Fort Severn, just a few miles to my right is where the Fort Severn, mouth of the Fort Severn River goes out into James Bay. And I'm so glad to be here today because I have learned so much from these great people here at Fort 7. I have learned from the, the Canadian government what it means to them. Today, I have a better understanding of what that treaty that was signed in early 1900s means to them, and they've tried to explain to me. And today I'm beginning to understand what it means now to Native people. And it means something really good and that we could benefit if we worked with the government of Canada. And I think we have a good future by what we see our young people going to universities, getting their degrees in political sciences, and they would be the ones to make treaties fulfilled, and also that our young people, my grandchildren, benefit. Treaties were signed by my ancestors, understanding that they were signing as a nation. But as I understand it now today, the government of Canada signed a treaty to protect Canada itself, not that Native people will benefit from it. But because of my grandparents, my grandmothers understood what they were signing, now today we can benefit from it. And now we're saying to the government of Canada, you got to fulfill that treaty that you signed, and they're actually doing it. And today I'm sitting here with you to talk to you because we are seeing the benefits of education, of our land, and of that treaty. But it was intended to protect only Canadians, the government of Canada. But now, because of our leaders, the Anishinaabe Nation, and Tikiwid Nagugumachanik, they see a benefit here. And today we are starting to benefit from that vision that my grandparents had. And now I'm so proud to tell you that you're going to benefit from it. Treaties was signed just to protect Canada. And because of the vision of our ancestors, we're going to benefit from it. And the governments are starting to see that Native people are asking for what they were promised. And now it's starting to be fulfilled. And now today, I'm going to tell you about Native people, and our Native young men are starting to see that they can benefit from that treaty, and they're asking Canada to fulfill it. I want to tell you what I was when I was a young man. I went to school, Indian day school, called it Indian day school. I went to school from July, August. It was 2 months. And when I went to school, I didn't understand a word of English. The only thing I knew was my language, Soto. That was my first language. And today I'm talking to you in my second language, English. I became a chief when I was 31 years old in Deer Lake, Ontario, and I was surveying the land to become a reserve when I was 31 years old. And then I became a chief of January 1984. I became a chief at that time. In those 3 years, 84, 85, 86, it took me 3 years to make Deer Lake a reserve. We were promised early 1970s that Deer Lake was going to become a reserve. And when I became chief, I was surveying the land to become a reservation of Deer Lake, Ontario. And in 1986, they finally gave me a piece of paper to say that now Deer Lake is now a reservation. And I was so glad when I picked up that paper. And they told me it's in Ottawa. No, it's in Toronto. No, it's in Ottawa. No, it's in Ontario. In Toronto. 3 years they told me that. And finally in 1986, I got a piece of paper in Ottawa saying that it was signed and it became a reservation. And now we have a number, it's 237, Deer Lake Reservation. That's our number. And my personal number is 144. So those are the things that we've seen happening because of that treaty that was signed in 1910. But because of where we're situated, when we signed in 1910, we signed a Treaty 5. And now Treaty 5 is in Manitoba. And now we're in Ontario. Now we're under Treaty 9. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there, because when I go get my treaty money, I get $5 because I'm in Treaty 5. When Treaty 9, like Sandy Lake, they get $4. That's up north from Deer Lake. When Poplar Hill collects their money, they collect $5. So we get more money than in Treaty 5 than Treaty 9. So there's a lot of these things that they work with, but I am so proud to be part of Treaty 9. I was in 1984. I became Chief's representative for Treaty 9, so I sat with the Treaty 9 executive for a number of years. So I was, and then I was chairman for Bedavan Chiefs Tribal Council for quite a few years. And then I became a councillor. I was there for 16 years. And in 1984, we started a company called Tikanagan Child and Family Services. I sat with Tikanagan Child and Family Services for 27 years. 23 years of those years were as chairman of the board. So I'm so glad we did start. I was part of a lot of those things that were given. The natives were given back a lot of the programs. And then one of the things I'm so proud of is also the education and health. And health is something that I'm really glad that we are given a chance to be part and to take over health. Just a few months ago, there was an opening that we were able to take our nursing station back from Health Canada, and now Kiwid Nagugamakanig is running a nursing station at Deer Lake. I just wanted to say a few of these things to tell you what Colby has been able to do. I was a councillor when we asked Jordy to run Colby, or not Colby, Kiwid Nagugamakanig. He said to me, Mr. Ray, I'll do it just for a little while. And I'm so glad he stayed as long as he did. He did a wonderful job, and I'm glad to be part of Colby, to be sitting here at the bottom of Fort Severn and to tell you, you have a good future. Make it worthwhile. Work hard. Get a good education. That's where you're going to survive, because you can't survive now where I come from. I was a trapper. I was a fishing guide. But now that is gone now. Now you have to get an education to become a doctor, to become a lawyer, to become a nurse, to become a business manager, to study all these special skills, and you can do it. My daughter went to university. She's a business manager. She's an office manager today. My son is an aircraft technician trained. So you can do it. I urge you, go to school, learn as much as you can. Thank you. I think one of the differences that a long time ago we were given seeds to plant potatoes, and they gave us warm clothes, and then they gave us a bag of flour so we can make bannock. That was a long time ago. And then when I became chief in 1984, soon after that we were given a check. I think I was given a $125 check, and then they gave me a suit. They gave me a fancy suit, and I thought, hey, that's pretty good. So, and then my mom used to tell me to dress up, to present myself, so I look good. So when I became chief in 1984, I learned I'd go to Ottawa to meet with the premier or prime minister, and I used to have three-piece suits over there, really nice. So, and then since then, we were given a check, money, to buy things for yourself. From long time ago, 1910, we were given something, a trap or a net at that time, but $5 on top of that instead of $125. So there is a difference. They upped a little bit from $5 to $125 to the chief, though, not to a regular citizen. They still give him $4 or $5, whichever treaty you signed. So I think the difference is more and that's where we are right now. I think my transition, I am the transition. I'm the one that used to trap. Now I became a businessman. I ran a business for 15 years as president of an airline business. And then I ran a store, 3 stores. That's the transition from being a trapper to running a business. And that's what our young people are learning today. And Colby is a very good example of that. They're into business. And now I see this happening, that we're taking over school curriculum. And that's the difference. I think that's from a long time ago to now. The government is saying you can do it, and they're actually giving us funds to do it. And I think that's the difference now. Okay, today we have highways, great big highways, 400, great big 12-lane highways. Long time ago, there was only one way to get around, which was rivers. Fort Severn River. We come from Fort Severn River. You can go paddle and portage the rivers. And Deer Lake is a very unique place. Deer Lake, you can go from start at Fort Severn, come down this way, paddle. In Deer Lake, there's a Cochrane River. It goes all the way to Lake Winnipeg. And in Winnipeg, there's a city called Winnipeg. And then from Deer Lake, there was this long time ago, there was this guy, his name was Oscar Lindoken. He was a trapper. He was a Norwegian. He traveled from Red Lake to Pekanscum, Poplar Hill. There's rivers there. The Burns River runs over there. And that's how he traveled. And when he found Deer Lake, a long lake there, he can go to Red Lake, Winnipeg, and all the way to Sandy Lake, Big Trout Lake, and all those communities. He can paddle in the summertime. In the wintertime, he'd put on his snowshoes and walk to these communities. And then he says, the Deer Lake is a really good place because I can go different communities from here and go get my groceries from Winnipeg. And then he says, he built a little tiny store. I think maybe 3 people can go in to shop. And to sell something, he had a pound of lard, he'd cut it up in 10 pieces. That's how he started the store. And I still remember that gentleman Uh, when we started the store in Deer Lake, we bought his store. Well, somebody else, he sold it to somebody else, and then we bought the store from this other gentleman, and then we ran that store that he started long time in early 1900s, and then because of where Deer Lake is situated, people from Little Grand, Island Lake, paddled from Lake Winnipeg all the way down through here, and that's how Sandy Lake, Big Trout Lake, and all those communities, start making, like Casablanca and Webequie and Summer Beaver.
Was it still called Deer Lake though?
No,
Oh.
yeah, but a long time ago, Deer Lake was one of the original communities, and then that's where Sandy Lake, North Spear Lake, and then some of the other ones like Muskrat Dam came from North Spear Lake and on, and then from Round Lake too. So that's one of the original communities is Deer Lake, Ontario. Sandy Lake people, the Fiddler family, they couldn't agree with Mr. Ray and Mikas, so the Fiddler family moved from Deer Lake to Fairville Lake, and then from Fairville Lake they went down, come towards the Sandy Lake, and that's how it.
So what was the traditional name of Deer Lake then? Before?
Adhuzagan. It's still like that. Adhuzagan. That's how it. Because long time ago, the caribou migrated through Deer Lake, and then that lake is pretty long. It's about 65 miles long, and then when the caribou migrated through there was lots, thousands of them migrating through Deer Lake, and then in the wintertime, the families, they would come together to kill caribou when they migrated there, and they would kill lots of them, and they would survive that way, and then where Deer Lake is situated, it's really it's right in the middle. It's about 30 miles to the east, and then there's another 45 miles to the west. That's where it is, and then right on top of Fort Severn River. Fort Severn River comes down, and then the other ones coming from different lakes, different rivers. That's where Deer Lake is situated. It's kind of unique because that's where the Fiddler family moved away soon after they signed the Treaty 10. Yeah, and then Deer Lake Band Sandy Lake Band was called Deer Lake Band until 1980, I don't know, 86 or 84, and then Deer Lake, and then Sandy Lake became a band. That's what it was then, long time ago. In Deer Lake, about 25 miles west of Deer Lake Community, that's where Cochrane River starts to go to Lake Winnipeg, and then right where it starts, Deer Lake's on this side, and Cochrane River and then there's a lake there, and then there's a rapids. If the lake on the Cochrane River is higher, the river flows into Deer Lake, and then when the Cochrane River is lower than Deer Lake, and then flows out of Deer Lake, when we call it Kwek. That's what we call it. It always moves. That little rapids, and we love fishing there. And if you go there at any time, depending the river or that rapids always moves. Sometimes goes northwest, and sometimes moves southeast. Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed and I've encouraged our young people is to go get an education and come back. Marla, Doreen, and Victoria Mikas. Victoria Mikas is my youngest in our siblings. She's the youngest of our family. She went to school. She went to university. She got her papers to become a teacher, and she came back. She's teaching for the last 30 years, almost 30 years, no, almost 40 years now in Deer Lake. So she came back. And Doreen, she went to school. She went to somewhere else to teach. She came back to Deer Lake. Marla, she went out to school. She came back to teach. And because of that, our young people that are there said, I want to go get my education and I want to come back. And I asked them why. Well, my teacher came back. And then a lot of them, they're encouraged by this. And I see that that could possibly be true in other areas. The problem is today, our leaders doesn't understand that yet, but I think it's coming. My son, he's a very well-educated mechanic. He could be trained as a heavy-duty mechanic, and they told him, no, you're trained as a aircraft technician. We don't have airplanes here, so you can't work for us. So once more of our educated people come, they will see that whoever's educated could be trained as a different kind of a mechanic than not just what he was trained for. So I think that is coming. And our young people, because they went out to school, because they've been trained at different education and vocations, if they go for a job, they say, oh yeah, I know you were trained for this, but because of your understanding and because of your education, we'll hire you and we'll train you for this thing. That's where there's a difficulty right now at the moment. But I think our young men that are going to get education and come back, they will see that that's what could happen, and it's coming. But unfortunately, right now, it's not there yet. But I can see that it is working right now. When I went to school, when I was a young man, I went out to school, and now, about 10 years ago, I got accepted at Deer Lake. 10 years ago. 2 years ago, I got I got stuck out in the bush. We went out on the skidoo, my wife and I, and then we got summer. We went to our camp. Going to our camp, I fell through the ice, and the boat hit my head and almost drowned me. And I was trying to get on the boat, and then I couldn't. And my wife says, I got to try to pull you out. Every time I pushed the boat down, the thing would go there, water would go in there, and then the ice was over here, and it was really bad. And then Deer Lake, all night Saturday, they were out all night trying to get across the lake, but the ice was so weak they couldn't get on there. And then on Sunday, to make a short story, they flew by with a float airplane, and then my son was in there in the plane, and then my wife was so. And then on her way back on Saturday, she fell through the ice. It took me 5 hours to get her off the ice because the ice was so weak. It took me 5 hours. She was in the water, and it took me a long time. And she couldn't walk, so we had to walk from where she was about 3 miles. I had to pull her, and it took a long time. So anyway, that Sunday they flew by, and they saw us. And then they went back to Deer Lake, and they said they were okay. We were standing, we were waving. And then about 3 hours later, they came with a helicopter, and they got us. My brother came. When we got off the plane at Deer Lake, all of Deer Lake was there. They say, I'm glad you're alive. We love you. And then I knew that I was accepted fully. But before, they always look at me as somebody better than them. Oh, I hated that because I never was better than them. But because I did things, I was a pilot, and I got, all those training and everything else, and they thought that, Saggius came here to teach us or to show us. Yeah, that's right, to take over. That's right, he's a chief, he's doing this, he's a businessman, and he's running this airline, and he's running Tikanagan, great big corporations. He thinks he's better than I am. I didn't like that. I thought they were my cousins and my uncles and everything else. But then 2 years ago when we were out there, a lot of people, when they came to shake my hand, they said, "I'm glad you're alive," and I knew I was accepted. And today they treat me really good. They treat me really, really nice. It's something that you can look at them as man to man, you know, and I really like that. That's something that I really, really appreciate. Long time ago when I had my store, they told me take the man to the you know to court. Dear Lake owed me maybe about $10 million. I forgive them for that. So, and different communities over there owes us things, but they, I've never asked for money ever. I volunteered most of my life. I'm not a rich man, but I'm rich because I got friends like you guys. That's what it is. That's what I tell my Deer Lake people and Sandy Lake people. And here I have friends in Fort Servant. I really do. That Mr. Thomas here, Stanley. And there were other people that I worked with Tikanagan and with other corporations we were working with.